Welcome to episode 240 of Self-Defense Gun Stories. We're glad you found us if you're well-trained, and also if you're new to self-defense. I'm Rob Morse, and we're joined this week by firearms instructor Robin Sandoval. How have you been, Robin?
Hi, Rob. I've been good. Life at a Girl and a Gun is exciting. We're preparing for our Clays Extravaganza. In this event, we welcome women from all over the country to Kansas City for 3 days of shotgun fun. So that's always a great time because, sometimes the sporting clays events are a good time to reset and enjoy shooting as a recreational sport, which is a departure from the intense defensive shooting that we normally do.
Right.
As you know, I just returned from Ohio where I took an emergency response class with Faster Saves Lives. This is such an incredible program for armed teachers and really for all those who care about our schools and our children. The pistol training was incredible. Speaking of children, I'm excited that my son is accompanying me to a precision rifle class that we have coming up in 2 weeks. So that's what I'm busy now is getting all the gear ready. And some families go to Disney World during summer vacation, but we're going to shoot targets that are about 1.5 miles away. So that'll be great.
Well, I have been to the Faster class, but I've never done long-range shooting. You'll have to tell me about it.
All right. Here in the U.S., we defend ourselves with a firearm tens of thousands of times each week. In this episode, we'll look at a few recent examples and see what we can learn. We give the links back to the original news articles on the podcast webpage. So let's look at our first story that took place in Lewis County, West Virginia.
Are you armed at home? You're arguing with your boyfriend. You didn't see it coming when your boyfriend attacks you from behind and hits the back of your head. You fall to the ground. Now your attacker kicks you. You shout for him to stop, and your attacker says he's going to kill you. He climbs on top of you and chokes you. You're armed. You roll to the side, pull your handgun from your pocket, and shoot your attacker in the chest 1 time. Now he lets go. You stop shooting. You move to safety and call 911. Emergency medical services said your attacker died at the scene. You give a statement to the police. You're not charged.
The attacker waited until she had her back to him before he attacked. Talk about a sucker punch.
Yeah.
The good thing is she was armed. She was able to access her firearm and stop the threat. She called 911, stayed at the scene, and gave a statement to the police.
Robin, the defender didn't see this attack coming, but you and I have seen things like this before. How likely is it that she was attacked on prior occasions?
Maybe she carries all the time, or maybe she had some intuition or indication that she needed to protect herself. So often women finding themselves in these situations, they don't want to seem dramatic or overreact, when in reality they need to trust themselves, because domestic abusers seldom stop themselves. The pattern will continue until the victim stops it.
If he thought it was okay to hit you once, it probably won't stop. What do you tell your students to do if they're in an abusive situation?
Well, the first step is to hopefully avoid being in an abusive situation, and I encourage all of my students to read the book, The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to be able to identify the signs of potential violence.
Do you ever ask your students to seek some counseling before they seek training for armed defense?
Yes, if a woman's in a crisis situation, she needs to find resources that specialize in the help she needs. So the first step is going to be for her to find a safe place to live, counselors to help her manage the wave of emotions that she'll be experiencing. But learning self-defense is a journey. It starts with situational awareness and then training with non-lethal, less than lethal tools, possibly lethal force, depending on the totality of the circumstances.
That's quite the journey. How common is it for a victim of domestic violence to fight back?
We think that there are about 5 million assaults and 1,000 deaths from domestic abuse each year. The Girl and a Gun community was rocked a couple years ago because one of our founding members in our San Antonio chapter, was the victim of intimate partner violence. Her husband actually took her life and then took his own. It was a loss for all of us.
Robin, when would your students learn to fight from the ground?
First, you would start with the foundations of marksmanship. That would be your intro to basic pistol. And then next, you might take an advanced class, be advanced handgun or a moving and shooting class. A lot of times in the course description, it will talk about alternate positions or training from the ground. A lot of women are using Krav Maga or other techniques to learn how to escape moves. by learning how to maneuver your body and leverage your body to get out of those grabs in context with how to move your body with your firearm and obtain a sight picture and retention of your firearm. All of that kind of works together.
This is a journey, not a magic weekend.
That's right. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of thought to learn first the marksmanship skills, the tactics, and of course the mindset goes into that as well.
I took a self-defense class where we were on the ground wrestling. Ben Branham was my partner. He is a large, strong man. And all I can say is never give up. Is there more you want to say about this story?
No, I think that's enough for now. So let's look at the next story that happened in St. Louis, Missouri.
Are you armed at work? You're doing some modifications and a cleanup at an Italian restaurant. You come in after hours to do the work. It's 3 a.m. when a man forces his way through the front door of the restaurant. You shout that the place is closed and for him to leave. That's when the man charges you. You're armed. You draw your firearm and shoot your attacker. Now the attacker stops. You stop shooting. You back away and call 911. Emergency medical services takes your attacker to the hospital. He's expected to recover. You give a statement to the police and you're not charged.
In this situation, the defender worked where no one else was around to help him. He recognized he was in danger. He provided his own protection. Sounds like he carried on body. He stopped shooting when his attacker stopped advancing. He called 911, got police and EMS on the way, and gave a statement to the police.
You and I have talked off air. I know you just went through some training to simulate an attacker who's running toward you. What was that like? What did you learn?
It always reiterates that these situations happen in the blink of an eye. And that's why training is so important, because you don't want to spend those seconds panicking or processing. You have to recognize the situation and respond instantaneously. In the recent scenario training I was doing, I was able to deliver accurate shots on target. That was a really great confirmation of the times I've practiced at the range.
Let's back up a step. We have shooters of all kinds of abilities. When do they learn to present from a holster and then from a concealed holster? Again, I know that isn't taught in the NRA basic pistol class.
That's right. Holster work is vital, and it's important to learn it depending on your goals. If you obtain your firearm for recreation or for home defense, there's different ways of using it. But if you're going to use it for concealed carry, having that holster work is really important from day one. After your basic pistol, when you're comfortable working your firearm, if you're at the range or at an indoor range on a table and everything is lined up on the bench and you're learning the basics of presenting on target, manipulating the slide and changing the mag, the next step would be for you to be introduced to the holster, because that's going to be a primary method of you carrying your firearm. After your intro to basic pistol, look for an intro to holster class. Many ranges will offer it, many instructors offer it. At A Girl and a Gun, we offer intro to holster, and it's recommended for all of our students.
You don't want to learn that from a buddy who happens to concealed carry. There's a lot of fine points in getting a gun in and out of a holder efficiently, and you don't get it exactly right the first time. It really helps to have a good instructor. When do you tell your students about a safe distance? We talk about distances like 7 yards, but it could be larger, and that's important so that they can recognize when someone could become a threat.
Dennis Tueller published this for the first time. It was back in 1984, and his research stated that an assailant within 7 yards had an advantage over an officer that had a holstered firearm. Tueller labeled this as the reactionary gap. It's the time it takes for you to recognize a threat, make a decision to employ a firearm, and then use the firearm. And Tueller's work emphasized the importance of taking proactive measures. You want to identify someone from far away. You might want to create more distance if you can, utilize obstacles, and of course you want to be able to present your firearm on target quickly, in less than 1.5 seconds to be exact. So it's important for you to know your own personal reactionary gap. If you can identify and stop a threat in less than 1.5 seconds from concealment, then you know your personal perimeter of safety is about 21 feet or greater. But will it be 30 feet, 50 feet, 70 feet? When you train with a shot timer and you can test your reaction time, now you're going to view the world differently. Recently, we did have a Tueller drill class specifically at our national conference. This is a concept that's dealt with a lot, and I've actually been in scenario training with simulators, so a lot of our ranges will have a simulator a laser shot machine or something like that. And I've been in the simulator where it simulates the tool or drill. So someone is running to you and you have to the laser firearm and place shots on target. And it's shocking how close they get to you. And in that moment when you're rushing to get presented on target, how often it's easy to miss. With ammo being the way it is, expensive and hard to get, using those laser shot machines can be really beneficial.
Do you go over making a 911 call with your students?
Yes, we do, because it's important that they know location, location, location. That's the first bit of information. You need to be able to convey that to a dispatcher so that they can send help to where you are. And you also want to identify yourself and what you're wearing. Let 911 know briefly what the attacker did, the state of the situation presently, so that medical and police are prepared when they enter the scene. Save the details until you have some quiet time to process your thoughts and speak with your attorney.
Often they talk about that briefly in a concealed carry class.
It can also be discussed if you go to a legal lecture from USCCA or US Law Shield or any of the other legal organizations.
The Mag 20 classroom portion. Where are we going for our third story?
Well, our third story happened in Carmichael, California.
First, this message from Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership.
Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership is a pro-Second Amendment advocacy and watchdog group founded in 1994 comprised of physicians, scientists, and other health professionals. DRGO helped stop gun control advocacy by the Centers for Disease Control. DRGO has provided policy background and contributed to major U.S. District and Supreme Court firearms cases. DRGO experts have been featured on many written, broadcast, and online media. We want to connect with you. Visit us at drgo.us and 2adoc.com because guns are not a public health issue.
Are you armed at home? You're sitting in your trailer when you and your friend hear a noise outside. You're parked in a store parking lot, and it's 9 in the morning. Your friend goes outside to investigate the sounds. Seconds later, you hear shouts and gunshots. You step outside to see your friend fighting with an armed man. You're armed. You present your firearm and shoot the attacker. Now the stranger lets go of your friend. You check on your friend and call 911. Police were already on the way. Your attacker had driven his car on the sidewalk and deliberately run over 2 pedestrians. The attacker then crashed his car into another vehicle before he attacked your friend. EMS takes your attacker to the hospital for treatment. They also transport your friend. You're not charged.
When I first heard this story, I assumed it was a homeless individual because in my home city, we've been dealing with a major crisis with the homeless overpopulation. So I frequently see intoxicated people walking through parking lots and even stopping traffic on busy streets. That's what I thought this scenario was. But then we later learned that the attacker had arrived in a vehicle after running over pedestrians, ramming his truck into another car, pushing it over 100 yards. He had to have been on something. The toxicology report would be fascinating.
Sadly, we're seeing more and more of that. What do you think our defender did correctly?
Well, he was armed. A gun is a rescue tool, and when you need it right now. So this defender recognized this armed and dangerous threat. He stopped the threat, stopped shooting, took care of his friend, and called the police.
You bring up something interesting there, Robin. He stopped shooting. What does it look like if the threat, and this is sort of in quotes, goes away? If the bad guy still has a gun in his hand, is he still a threat, even if the gun's not pointed at your friend?
Yes, because this guy not only had a gun, but he was a threat with a truck, because this attacker had already used lethal force before he even gripped his firearm. So he used lethal force with his truck, he's lethal force with his firearm, and the news story also says he has a crowbar. Even if shots took him down to the ground, the defenders need to stay vigilant about watching him. Even if he's down, he's not out, he's still a threat.
There's some subtlety involved there. When do you talk to your students about those both legal and tactical issues?
Part of being a responsibly armed citizen is knowing the laws of your state. So this applies to carry laws, storage laws, all the way up to use of force laws. That's why we recommend these legal clinics. A lot of times ranges will offer them if they're partners, again with US Law Shield or USCCA. Know when you're allowed to use of force, know how to identify those threats, and how you can respond to them.
Andrew Branca goes around the country giving those lectures.
That's right, The Law of Self-Defense. It's a great book also.
What else do you see in this story?
We think of California as being antagonistic to gun owners, But ordinary citizens are able to get carry permits, and in Sacramento County, California, this one did, and it saved lives.
Ooh, that reminds me, Texas has just passed constitutional carry. A citizen without a criminal record who's legally able to own a firearm can carry it concealed in public. A girl on a gun is going to be very busy.
Yes, I'm very proud of this. I was very fortunate to work with a lot of people at the Capitol and provide testimony and get this passed. So permitless carry will remove obstacles for people who want to be their own first responders and hopefully free up their budget for good training. A lot of people who are teaching the license to carry courses are now going to still continue teaching the license to carry courses. People still need to know the laws. As we discussed, ignorance is no excuse of the law. So knowing when and where you can carry, knowing if you're a qualified person to carry, knowing the different signage on different storefronts on if you're allowed to carry in those places. A lot of the laws didn't change. What did change is some of the obstacles were removed. So this is a really great step for freedom, but training is still very important.
Yeah, just because the state doesn't require the class, you have to be just as informed.
And let's be honest, how often is state-mandated training an enjoyable class? If you have required training at your office, everyone groans to be there. No one wants to be there. The training is usually subpar. So by recognizing that this is important material, and I'm going to choose an instructor that's enthusiastic about it, that's knowledgeable about it, and can provide me additional ongoing opportunities. You know, at Girl and a Gun, we have a member roadmap. It's not just a one-and-done class. Now it's a journey that you're on, and what's the next step, and where can we go from here, and how do we get more involved in the community? And hopefully, it'll just raise the bar for all of that statewide.
Speaking of roadmap, take us to our fourth story.
Our fourth story took place in Dallas, Texas.
Are you armed as you ride as a passenger in a car? It's a little after sunset when you and your friend pull into a convenience store. You're in the passenger seat and you see a man walk up to your friend who's driving. The stranger pulls a gun and tells your driver to hand over his wallet and keys. You're armed. The story doesn't say if the gun was in the glove compartment or on the seat, but you grab the firearm and shoot your attacker. The attacker shoots back. You're injured. The driver calls 911 and asks for emergency medical services. The police arrive and they disarm your attacker. You leave your gun in the car. EMS transports you to the hospital for treatment. The driver talks to the police. Police review the security video from the gas station, and you're not charged. Doctors say you're going to get better. Your attacker died at the hospital.
19-year-olds aren't allowed to carry concealed in Texas, at least not yet, unless they're in the armed forces or in the reserves. But this young defender recognized the threat, stopped the attack, and stopped shooting.
That is so much to get right. When do you talk to your students about defending themselves when the attacker has a gun in his hands and the gun's pointed at them?
By pointing a gun into the car, the attacker demonstrated the intent to use deadly force against those in the vehicle. The threat was clear and imminent. Students will learn this in an Intro to Concealed Carry course, how to recognize the threat. This is, again, a legal topic that we talk about. What threshold is that threat imminent? Is it capable? All of the legal requirements.
You mentioned concealed carry. About how many people have their concealed carry permits?
Well, there's about 20 million of us now, but with constitutional carry passed, maybe it'll increase.
A bunch of people who are new to the firearms community have guns, quote, in their home or, quote, in their car. What do you think of carrying a gun in the glove box of your car?
Car itself is not a gun safe. So if you're going to keep a firearm in your vehicle, make sure it's secured from anyone who may break into your car and secure from curious children. There have been times when I was traveling and I didn't want to have my holster on body, so I would place my firearm in my holster so that my trigger guard's covered. I would place that into the console while I was driving, and if I left the vehicle, I would again move the holster back on body. There are a number of quality gun safes that you can use that have features for either temporary storage or for quick access. Know that the laws of transporting your firearm in your vehicle also vary from state to state.
When would your students get a chance to draw from a seated position while an instructor critiques them, gives them some feedback?
You can take a vehicle defense class to teach you how to work around your vehicle, where hard cover is, and how to maneuver around the seatbelt and other things. These are much more advanced skills. So just know, if you're on your journey, taking a vehicle defense class is really informative, and it's also a lot of fun. but that might be a little bit down the road. But the best practice might actually be in competitive shooting. So my last 3-gun match, there was specifically a stage where you had to engage an array of pistol targets as the minivan passenger. So you're sitting in the seat and engage steel targets from the window. So competition is a great way to practice these skills for speed and accuracy, and it also has the simulated stress of the shot timer.
You'll also find out how really loud a firearm is if you shoot it inside a car. Robin, that wraps up this episode. I want to thank you again for helping us. Where should we go to learn more about you and what you're doing?
You can find me at agirlandagun.org, and A Girl and a Gun is on all of the social media platforms, and we have events coming up all over the country.
So after you look at Robin's chapters and her articles, then please leave her a message on the podcast Facebook page.
We share this podcast with you for free, so please share the podcast with a friend and give us a rating on iTunes and Stitcher. We're also available on Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Podbean, and iHeartRadio.
This show is part of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Find more pro-freedom podcasts at sdrn.us. I'm Rob Morse. I hope we'll be back next week with more self-defense gun stories.